Sunday, October 15th, 2023, the 28th Sunday in Ordinary Time. The wedding feast is the biblical image of the encounter of love between the Lord and Israel. In the parable, the bridegroom, the son, is Jesus, and the bride is the whole of humanity. The banquet is the happiness of the Messianic era. Whoever accepts the proposal of the gospel and enters the kingdom of God experiences the most authentic and deepest joy. The servants are sent to invite the guests. The first invitees did not come to the party. They didn't have the heart to abandon their interests, their fields, and their businesses. They did not need a banquet. They felt satiated, believing that they already had what was needed for a life without problems. The guests gathered from along the streets and squares are the people of the whole world, the bad and the good, without distinction. In fact, priority is given to those who do not have merits. It's a subtle way of alluding to the complete gratuitousness of God's love that, as St. Paul writes, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. This reminds us that the people of God is made up of people who are bad and good. It is an invitation to cultivate an understanding of human weakness and to keep the doors open to all our communities. The poor, the marginalized, those who feel rejected, must, in the church, find a place where they feel accepted, understood, and valued. The curtain could fall on this sweet and charming scene of everyone being part of the banquet. But instead, the parable continues with an episode that seems to ruin everything. The king enters the room, surveys the guests, and gets angry with one who did not wear the proper attire. He treats him with unprecedented and seemingly unjustified harshness. Those who join in the joyful feast cannot be stunned. This second part of the parable is not the continuation of the first. It is a new parable that is isolated and interpreted without reference to the previous one. The theme that the evangelist wants to focus on in this second part is the possibility, even for those who have accepted the invitation to enter the kingdom of God, of turning away from the logic of the gospel. They risk failure, as did those who declined the invitation. One might wonder, in the meantime, that among all those who were considered unworthy and originally excluded from the banquet, only one was actually unworthy. The rest were only perceived to be unworthy by prejudices. The new life of the Christian is often compared in the New Testament to a new dress worn on the day of baptism. It is not enough for us to have received the sacrament. We need to assume the appropriate behavior. We cannot present ourselves with the rags of old life, adultery, dishonesty, disloyalty, and moral debauchery. As for the punishment inflicted on the man without wedding attire, it should be noted, above all, that this rough way of expression is typical of Matthew. Only Matthew uses the expressions thrown out into the extreme darkness and where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The other evangelists do not use such strong language. Matthew writes to the Jews who are used to being extorted and reprimanded by their preachers with these strong cultural expressions. We should keep this fact in mind to avoid creating an absurd and even blasphemous image of God, a God without heart and without mercy. The purpose of the evangelist is to remind Christians, both then and now, of the seriousness of which they assume and carry out through baptismal commitments.